It's the sex toy revolutionizing masturbation. The Handy will get any dick haver through quarantine and can even let a long-distance partner control your orgasm from afar. Get free shipping with code BILLY20 at thehandy.com. That's TheHandy.com. The Man Whore Podcast is sponsored by Alt Playground. APG is more than just a place to find couples to swap with. Alt Playground is a lifestyle community for all non-monogamous and sexually adventurous people to connect and share. And you know I started a profile. Join me over at altplayground.net. That's ALT playground.net. Now let's get to the show.
Welcome to the Man Whore Podcast.
Shout out to all you fan whores, you whore heads, and all the head-giving robots. They're real. Oh, this is Billy Persida, and you are listening to the Man Whore Podcast. Yeah, they're real, and we're sponsored by one of them. Isn't that cool? I swear I have seen a cunnilingus version of the Handy, like some sort of toy that's like a tongue that mimics licking. I feel like I've seen this. And if it doesn't exist, then you sex tech nerds need to get on this thing. And sex tech is one of the several topics we're talking about this week with Dr. Marianne Brandon. She's a psychologist, a sex therapist, a sex coach. And I cannot wait to share my riveting conversation with her in a little bit. But first, I want to say thank you to those of you who have reached out since last week's show. I'm okay. I am okay. Just been having some struggles ever since that Maya Diamond episode where we discussed attachment theory. We did that exercise on air. Just a lot of things on my mind, and I've been having some struggles. Figuring out what are my actual needs in a relationship and what are my perceived needs because of this anxious attachment style of mine that maybe I just kind of need to get over and conquer. And so that's been a bit difficult for me without getting too deep into it, but I'm a be okay. Some other stuff has come up too. My past tweets catching up with me again. So just as I conclude another year, just doing my best to be better, and when I mess up, just try harder the next day. Best a person can do. Also a shout out, by the way, to all of y'all sending me fan mail on OnlyFans. That was not completely expected. Did I expect y'all to come on over and take a look at the thirsty trappies? Yeah, but I didn't expect I would get so many messages that start with, "Hey, dude, big fan of the podcast. Can't wait to see your dick." That's been fun. By the way, the ladies on OnlyFans are far outspending the men on OnlyFans. And I want to estimate women are like 20% of my followers on there. Just so as usual, women showing that they're better than men. I don't know what to say. My Christmas was good. I can say that. Had a after over a month, probably like 5 to 6 weeks of planning and execution, my mom, my two sisters, my brother-in-law, and the other sister's live-in boyfriend, both named Andy, by the way, fun, myself and Megan, and in a different household, all fairly by his lonesome, my father, Billy Sr., had what resembled a pretty great fucking Christmas. And I was very lucky that we all had the means to do what was responsible so we could be together in a somewhat normal fashion for several days. And it was great. I think I got some major brother-in-law points. I really do. I have a new brother-in-law as of this year, and they're having a kid in February. I mean, it's more that I'm becoming an uncle than my sister's having a baby in my eyes. And my brother-in-law, Andy, said back at Thanksgiving that he really would like for Christmas the Little Tykes basketball hoop. You all know what this is. If you looked at it, you'd be like, oh, yeah, we had one of those It's that plastic kind of adjustable hoop situation with the little ball for the little people shooting little jump shots. Because we want baby Chase to be a little, baby basketball all-star like her mama. Kind of difficult to find it in stock places, but I find one, I buy one. Weeks later, I get an email canceling the order. By the time that order was canceled, we were beyond that date at which you could guarantee that the gift would be shipped in time for Christmas. And look, my ego might be wrapped up in this a little bit, but I really want Andy to be able to open this on Christmas morning under the tree. I want to be able to, see the joy, the childlike joy in the man's eyes. My sister was a little kind of like, Andy, what are you talking about? Like, the baby's not even going to be able to use this toy for a year or two. So why do we need to get that for Christmas this year? I stuck up for my brother-in-law. I totally get it. I was like, look, Andy is used to an adult-sized basketball with an adult-sized basketball hoop, shooting adult people basketball shots, and he's pretty damn good at it, I think. I don't know. Never played with the guy. But let's just give him the benefit of the doubt. The guy can shoot a shot. And this thing, this little Tykes joint, that's not regulation. He's not prepared to shoot hoops on that. And you don't want him learning how to shoot a mini baby jumper with a mini baby ball on a mini baby hoop in front of the mini baby. You want him to be impressive and ready to teach. You don't want him learning alongside the child. So I get it. Dude needs to adjust his game. And yeah, he's going to need a year or two to adjust to these new regulations. I totally get wanting to get a jump start on this. So I'm like, I'm getting this thing. But I'm past the point. I can't find it anywhere in stores. I'm searching through all the online retailers for a place I can buy this in store and pick it up. And I'm telling you, I would keep buying it at some Best Buy, at some Kohl's, at some whatever. And I'd buy it. And then hours later, I'd get an email saying, hey, we had to cancel your order. JK, LOL, BRB, we don't have it in stock. I'm telling you, this toy is out of stock fucking everywhere. Everywhere. Can't find it. I'm thinking, oh no. So I was like, let's expand the search because I'm prepared to go on a drive. It's a pandemic. There's not much else for me to do. I even found one out in Short Hills, Pennsylvania, which is like right outside of Pittsburgh. And I was like mentally preparing myself to go on that drive. But then lo and behold, I find one just a little bit closer than Pittsburgh. I find exactly one left in Stoughton, Massachusetts at a Kohl's. I buy it. I'm waiting for the cancellation email. It doesn't come. Instead, I get a confirmation. In disbelief, I call the lady at Kohl's. I say, hey, you guys are like 4 hours away. I'm really prepared to come get this toy. I'm like really passionate about children's basketball. But is it like physically there? Like, is the box there in the store and has my name on it? Can I get like an eyewitness confirmation? Can we get proof of life like they do in the kidnapping videos? She's like, sir, this is a Kohl's. I'm like, okay. I drove 4 hours each way to some random town between Providence and Boston to pick up this toy. Fully prepared that should I get in some sort of, because we had that big snowstorm here. So, this is a couple days after that. So I'm thinking, you know what? If I go out, if this is how I go, if I die in some horrific car crash on the way there, at least it will have been for a good cause of baby Chase's future 3-point shot. And I gotta tell you, I look like a fucking all-star on Christmas morning. I think I may have won. And just in comparison, let's just say someone else in the family got them a grill, a whole ass adult people grill and grilling implements. I think he even got like a grilling apron. And he still said, I think the basketball hoop wins. And I'm like, fuck yeah. Affordable $35 presents and an 8-hour round trip drive for the win. Yeah. Brother-in-law awards. I want, give me my points. So yeah, Christmas was good, everybody. Christmas was good. It was good. They loved Megan, played ping pong, smoked a lot of weed with my mom. It was a nice Christmas, but now we're back to the reality that is the world. Oi. I need a bit of a palate cleanser. Let's do a fan whore appreciation moment. Real quick. Thank you, big time, to Wally Pecker Pop, who is very likely a cartoon character with a name like that, but I appreciate Wally Pecker Pop that you were able to find some cartoon space in your cartoon budget for little old me is much appreciated. You and all the other fan whores on Patreon have been helping keep a roof over my head, condoms on my cock, and my belly full of jelly sandwiches. So I hope you're enjoying all the behind the scenes content, the bonus episodes, access to special communities like the Peep Show. And you too can become a member for as little as $2. And I say as little as, but I promise you that $2 is not little to me. When all together, it forms a fan whore nation. Folks, you can become a member today at patreon.com/manwhorepodcast. That's Patreon, patreon.com/manwhorepodcast. Don't know what I'd do without you, sluts. I seriously don't know what I would do. This has been my main source of income, and I just want to show a little extra 2020 gratitude to all of you, even those of you who don't have it in your budgets right now to join up on Patreon, that you are subscribed, that you download each week. Hopefully you're sharing this podcast with your friends and on social media. Having thousands of strangers to talk to every week just has made this pandemic fucking livable for me. Thanks for keeping me from bouncing off the walls down here, everybody. I love you all so much. So much. And I hope to connect with more of you in my Discord server. The Champagne Room is free and is open to all. You just got to go join up at manwhorepod.com/Discord. And of course, there's a link to the show notes to that. This week's guest, Dr. Marianne Brandon. We had quite the discussion. She is a sex therapist and sex coach. She regularly contributes to Psychology Today. And we are talking about passion. We're talking about intimacy. We're talking about the sex robots, everybody. Hang on to your panties. Let's go see if the doctor is in. My guest this week, Dr. Marianne Brandon, has a book out called Monogamy, The Untold Story. And let me tell you part of that untold story. Monogamy is not the only option. And I think you know that. I'm sure you've been curious. I'm sure maybe you and a partner have been considering renegotiating the terms of the relationship. Maybe you're like, when this pandemic thing is over, I kind of want to go balls to the wall. And what better place to do that than with the experienced swingers at altplayground.net. Hundreds of thousands of experienced lifestylers and non-monogamous peoples are congregating at APG because, that's just the place to be. And with cases spiking all over the country, it's probably a good time to start laying the groundwork for your next non-monogamous adventure. And once you get those sweet, sweet vaccine shots in your arm, you can arrange all sorts of full swaps, threesomes, and outdoor woodland orgies that your heart desires. And hopefully that's going to be sooner than later. So start connecting with folks. Start exploring. Start dipping your toes in the non-monogamous world. Make a profile today at altplayground.net. That's ALT playground.net. You're about to hear Dr. Marianne Brandon and I discuss sex tech, and my sponsor this week, The Handy, is an innovative byproduct of the sex tech industry. Now, I know there's nothing new about fleshlights or even these blowjob simulating toys, but what is new is the sleek, minimal, and functional design from the Norwegian people. The Handy can go up to 10 strokes per second for all of you who are always going faster, 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 please faster, 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 faster. Okay, maybe some of y'all do it in a deeper pitch tone, but hey, that's where my voice register goes when I'm turned on. And if that's not enough, the Handy has a revolutionary multi-control feature where an unlimited number of devices can be controlled at the same time by just one person. Poly people, are you seeing the possibilities here? Yeah, are you a poly femdom with 5 dick-having subs spread across the nation and you want to control all their sex toy hand jobs at the same time? You can with the Handy. And it's a one-size-fits-all design for a comfortable fit or whatever you're packing. Don't delay. Go get that belated holiday gift that you've been wanting. Go to thehandy.com. That's THEHANDY.com and use promo code Billy20 for free shipping. Why is it Billy 20, but it gives you free shipping? That's a good question. I did ask them. Apparently shipping international does come out to about $20. So it's like getting 20 off. Billy 20 at thehandy.com. Change your masturbatory lives forever, or at least for the rest of the pandemic. Now let's get to the show. Let's see where like the world of sex robots, which are I literally just signed a sponsorship package with I guess we could call it a sex robot because it is a thing you plug in and then it performs a sex act upon a person. You know, one of those like fleshlights that like automates like a blowjob, right?
Yeah. Did you have the courage to try it?
It's been years, so I feel like I can bad talk a sponsor many years later. I got sponsored by a company, a toy called the many years ago, and they sent me one, and I definitely used it, and I was like, if I were a less sexually active person, if I struggled more with hooking up with people, I think I could see the value in this toy. I'd be like, I can see how someone would dig this. In the same way, like you put your fingers in a sex doll, you're like, oh, this is gross. But I kind of get where someone could, right? So I used it, but like it was loud. Yeah. The concept of cleaning it irked me out. And, like I came, but it was like an uncomfortable come. Like I had to forget that my dick was in a mechanical object. And as a dick haver, putting your dick somewhere that's like mechanical is scary.
That's why I said you were courageous, because I've heard that from multiple people. You want me to put what in where?
In theory, it sounds great. It sounds like a dream. Oh, I can just stick my dick in something and then I'm going to come. Beautiful. I'll get so much work done this way. But then in practice, you go like, oh, fuck. Because it's the noise. If it wasn't so loud, you'd be like, whoa, I could kind of look up at the ceiling and forget. But it's so loud, you're like, only a machine could be making that noise. So this new one, it's called the Handy. I'm waiting to get mine in the mail, but allegedly it's a more quiet toy, and easier to clean. And the other thing, my other complaint about was that they have like those beaded rings, right, to simulate the tightness, and I wish it had like one or two more of those rings so it could be tighter, because I like a tighter blowjob, and so this one has more of that. So I don't know, I'm curious, but it is like interesting where automated sex toys come into play, and that's why we've got you on here, Dr. Marianne Brandon.
Well, sex tech is fascinating, and they're transcending, I think, or at least soon will be, the way people interact intimately. It's mind-boggling, really. And the future of sex tech, even in the short term, is like sex toys will be able to kind of like monitor your heart rate and potentially the way your body's responding. So you can kind of create the type of orgasm you want, because the sex toy is going to be reading your arousal. Isn't that amazing?
It's amazing, but it also feels scary. I mean, look, I'm not scared of it because like I love coming and finding fun new ways to come. Like, great. But like a lot of people are really nervous and scared that if we can substitute human interaction, society will break the fuck down. And I'm like, I don't know. I just feel like the market share for that is like slightly smaller than human touch and the need for human interaction. Like, so I still feel like we'll choose human interaction when possible, if it doesn't like complain all the time. It's like, no, that's for any gender, by the way. I bitch and moan too. It's like,
well, that's the $1 million question, really. How compelling are these robots going to be? And I have to say that it really is, I used to think like you do, what you were just saying, that it's going to be a niche market. I'm not so sure anymore. I mean, what we see, for example, with younger folks who are much more used to technology from a very young age, kind of in an intimate way, they're more interested in like porn that is anime, cartoon, like not necessarily human. And if those kind of trends continue, they're going to be, I would imagine, we could speculate, less concerned about whether their partner is human or not. And I am speculating, but that's a question.
So now, and I'll get to that part in a second, because there's a concern I do have about empathy there, but just in terms of like what your relationship to this topic is like you are a psychologist, you are a sex therapist, a sex coach. So how long have you been practicing?
Oh, almost 25 years.
So sex tech can just apply to the most basic vibrator, let's say. So like where was sex tech at when you started or when you first became aware of sex tech?
So sex tech has been around for quite a while. Vibrators and dildos and those sorts of things were, I think, commonly used a few decades ago. That was like no big surprise. And it's really only been, I think, in the more recent past that sex tech has gotten much more intricate and complex. I got interested in it about 4 years ago when I was reading a survey of MIT scientists about robotics. And they were asking when these scientists, what their opinion was about when robotics would be humanoid, like be able to walk around like a human, and look human. And they weren't saying to these scientists, will this happen? They were saying when. And these brilliant brains were saying, well, maybe 20 years, maybe 50 years. That was sort of what the argument was. And so that got my attention. And I'm thinking, well, people are going to want to have sex with these. And then I came across a survey of AI experts, artificial intelligence experts. They were surveyed at one of their international conferences. Same kinds of questions. When is AI going to be human-like in its ability to interact? Once again, it wasn't will AI be humanoid, but when. And again, these technology experts were saying 20 years, 50 years, same kind of time frame. So now you put the intelligence into this robot, and I'm thinking people really will want to have sex with this. So that's what got my attention.
Whenever there's been a technological advancement, what's the first thing we try to do? We figure out how to fuck it or how we can make it help us fuck better. That's always Betamax versus VCR, HD DVD versus Blu-ray. Y'all saw that scene in Tropic Thunder, right? It's so like that's what we do with technology. I also like to think that, they keep saying 20 to 50 years because they know if they say like we're months away, they're like, oh, regulators will show up and try to stop it. So if they keep making it seem like it's a future concern, legislators won't have time to like nip it in the bud or anything like that. I don't know. That's just a thought. And is there any, like, I was at AVN earlier this year, back in the before times, when we could have a convention, and they had this booth. It was kind of like, what's that thing from the movie Big? It's like the fortune teller in the you put a quarter in, and that guy. Yeah, it was like that, but like it was the upper half of a sex doll that would like say basic things, and like you can have sex with the upper half of it. And it was like talking to people at AVN, and it was like freaky deaky. I think a concern people have is like, will this cause like a lack of empathy in like our young people who go, oh, I can get my orgasms from the machine so I can focus on my professional career or building a family or going on that road trip or whatever. I think there's a genuine concern there, a little like for some people, but also it always seems to come from like the moral outrage crew. And I don't trust them. Like I never trust their intentions. I think they just hate sex stuff. Like if it was coming from like a bunch of liberal types, I'd go like, all right, but I'm like, you guys hate everything that has sex in it. So I don't trust the concern. Like how concerned should we be that people won't want sex with another human as often?
Yeah, my best guess on this is it's going to fall out kind of like porn, and that there's going to be a subset of people that find porn to be very disruptive to their sex life in one form or another. And there's a subset of people that feel like porn has made their sex life so much better. It's really amped things up for them in wonderful ways. And most people fall somewhere in the middle and, don't have a real strong opinion one way or another. My best guess is as tech increases in its capability, we're still going to see that kind of bell curve would be my guess.
And how has like your opinion on sex tech been evolving or changing, since you were first introduced to the concept?
Well, so we know that sex tech for many people can provide more intense stimulation than a human partner can now. And we also know that a lot of folks are struggling in their intimate relationships. This is a more complex answer, I think, than you were asking for. But
we got a lot of time.
Yeah. So what the trends we're seeing culturally are that people are having less sex than they used to. Single people, married people, less sex. In fact, the only group that's not having less sex is elderly males, which is probably because they have Viagra now and stuff, right? So they can have erections when they weren't able to in the past. But everybody else, less frequency. We're seeing trends internationally towards men at least reporting less sexual satisfaction. We know that folks are not just stressed because of COVID, but that's amped it all up, right? But people are depressed. They're on antidepressants. Those have sexual side effects. People are stressed, all of this. And they're spending less time interacting together, which again, COVID is amped up, but still, as we spend more time on technology, we have less time to interact. So all of these trends, we don't know where they're headed, but we see no reason to believe they're going to turn back. So what that says to me is couples are stressed, people are stressed, and relationships are challenging. And so the more stressed we are, the less energy we have to put toward our relationships to make them feel better and more satisfying. And we're all like interested in simplifying our life and, taking stress away. So, there are different trends that are likely to interact that I think could play out over time, in terms of literally changing the way we are intimate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, especially during COVID, like my libido has been kind of like all over the place, but mostly in the tank for like most of this time, when you see the world crumbling around you, and it's go like, ugh, who wants to fuck in a time like this? But, like I have a girlfriend, who I've been with for like a year and a half, and we've been spending COVID together, and like, we don't have nearly as much sex as we had like last year. And part of that is like fucking COVID stuff, but also because, the COVID's making the romantic part of the relationship tougher. And because we're stressed out and stuff like that. So then it's like, even if I am horny, I want this romantic part to be intact before I'm indulging in the sex part. So like we might actually have overlapping good libido time, but I'm like, well, we haven't talked about X, Y, or Z, which was really only caused because like we're both stressed the fuck out because of COVID.
Right. Exactly. You're right on. And then also I think that there's a more subtle element at play for a lot of folks in that passion requires people feeling like open and vulnerable and exposed. That's a piece of the puzzle that makes things hot and interesting. And when people are stuck together 24 hours a day, in COVID isolation, it's much harder to get to a place where they feel like something new and refreshing is happening between them, because there's just so much repetition, not just the same partner, but the same daily patterns within a small living space. So that challenges things too.
And sex tech can be this great like intervention to help with things. So like I think like a marketing thing you're seeing with a lot of these like like sex positive toy brands is you're seeing them say like, here's couples toys, or they're taking toys that like aren't even really a couples toy, but they'll be like, well, here's a way it can be a couples toy, right? Like there's the there's like a vibrating cock sheath from Hot Octopus, where it's really a solo masturbation toy for a penis advert, but they figured out a way to market it as a couple's toy. Or the Motor Bunny, which is a frequent sponsor. It's like a straddle style vibrator, and like in theory like one person uses it, but like I love to use it with a partner and like do some edging and things and allow I'll control the dial, so now I'm involved in this experience, and we have this like wonderful tech in between us. But then there's this like seedier part where there are people nervous that there's just going to be a guy alone in a basement. I'm in a basement, by the way. There's going to be a guy alone in a basement with all these sex robots around, and God forbid he didn't touch a human. But also, is that bad? Like, is there what's I know you said like we don't know what the outcomes would be, but it's like, is that even a bad thing? We have an overpopulation problem in this country. Like, is it bad if some places aren't fucking that much anymore?
Well, oops, I'm going to lose my mic here, but I tend to agree with you, because the truth of the matter is people are struggling. We haven't perfected intimacy. I mean, 20% of marriages are sexless. The divorce rate is 50%. So most of those folks aren't having satisfying sex. People, 40% of women and 30% of men have a sexual concern, within the past year. So clearly we haven't perfected this thing called intimacy. There's room for improvement. So I think really this just calls for our consciousness and discussion like you do here on the show to bring people's awareness and to the situation so that we can use sex toys to improve and enhance intimacy. That's a very possible outcome here.
Do you think, and I'm using sex robots because it's a more fun thing to say and for lack of a better precise term, but like, do you think sex robots in and of themselves are not bad things, but rather if a society is not properly prepared for that could have negative effects? Or do you think like they just in and of themselves are not great for society?
Yeah, I think so. They're going to happen regardless. And I think, like I said, I think that, they're going to be troublesome for one group. They're going to be very helpful and life enhancing for another group. And then most people are going to fall somewhere in between. That would be my best guess.
Mm-hmm. And something I've talked about with a lot of the academics who come on the show is, we talk about, you said you started when we started talking about this, like, we don't know. And it's like, will we know? Because there's not a lot of studies on things in the sexuality realm. Hard to get funding. Like if we wanted to study the effects of certain sex tech as it's getting introduced in the marketplace. If no one's going to fund those studies, how are we going to find out the outcomes of it? So is that like, am I properly anticipating another barrier to understanding the effects of this may have one day?
Meaning because we can't study it, so we can't predict it.
Yeah, like a barrier to understanding whatever the effects may end up being.
I think that's a very real concern that, we don't have any way to really predict or understand. And things are in so much flux that I think that it's a constantly moving target.
Do you find within your practice, can you also differentiate to us like the difference between a sex therapist and a sex coach?
Sure. You know what? I think I might be having a sound issue, so let me check real quick.
Yeah, let's take a look.
My Siri came up and said, I didn't get that. Can you try again? Maybe it's no problem.
It also may have been just check, if you want to share your screen, you're welcome to, I'll take a look. But it also might have been Siri just hearing her name and piping up. And it's like, shut up, Siri, I'm in.
Well, that's right. Oh my God. Okay. I think it's okay. I did just pull this up. Yeah. I had an Alexa years ago and I have been doing therapy, virtually for a long time. And she started talking in the middle of a session and my client thought someone was in the room. So that was Alexa's last moment. Do you mind
referring to your partner as, I don't know, Jim? Cause I feel like that won't set her off. I know Alexa's really important to you. I'm just asking you to call her something else.
That's very funny. That's funny.
So what would you say the difference is between a sex therapist and a sex coach?
So I would say, probably people will answer this differently, but from my perspective, therapy involves more history, a person's life history, and involves maybe more potentially profound changes or looking at more complex concepts and the unconscious and stuff. Sex coaching is a lot more specific to a sexual issue, and it doesn't really involve history and complication. It's just more kind of like step 1, step 2 to kind of help move things in a different direction.
So would like a difference be like, my wife and I want to start, my wife and I want to do more exhibitionism, and like sex coaching would say like, here's some tips on how to execute that. And sex therapy would answer more like, why are me and my wife really interested in doing exhibitionism?
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So with your sex coaching practice, like do you find yourself sometimes suggesting sex tech to people and sometimes specifically not recommending sex tech to others?
I don't know. I suppose that's true, but yeah, it's probably true. It's not that much of, I think, a trend for me to say one way or another. But
okay. So it's interesting. When in the realm of therapy, sometimes like I've had friends. It's certainly not me because I've been broken for a long time. But I've had certain healthy friends. They'll go to a therapist, and the therapist at the end of the session is like, "I don't know that you need therapy." Mm-hmm. So in sex therapy, do you ever get individuals or couples or whatever show up and they think they have a problem, and at the end you're like, look, we can do this, but I think you're fabricating an issue here.
Yeah, that actually does happen because people really don't necessarily have a solid understanding of maybe what is typical or healthy or, sexually appropriate, whatever. They have these kinds of concepts and create a lot of shame for themselves. And so in that situation, absolutely, that would be an example of I don't see a problem with where are we? Mm-hmm.
When people come into your practice for sex therapy, how does that kind of start? Like, how do you test out to see what's, going on and what they need?
Well, so sometimes people know, and sometimes people don't. And so it's really just a matter of helping people feel comfortable speaking up, because even though you're talking to a sex therapist and you know that the dialogue is likely to involve sex, it still can be challenging. So it's about creating a safe space and giving everyone an opportunity to speak what's true, which can be hard for couples if they're in the room together. So I like to split them up initially and kind of get to know them individually before we get things going in a couple situation if I have that opportunity.
Mm-hmm. One of the most common questions I've gotten over the years with the show is like, how do I find like a sex positive therapist? Not necessarily a sex therapist, but still goes in there like how to find a kink friendly, poly friendly, like queer friendly therapist, someone who's not going to see non-monogamy, say, as a symptom, stuff like that. It's like, so for you, how do you create that safe space to let people know like this is a non-judgmental zone and, whatever you're into, it's probably all right here. And also when you come across something you are not as familiar with, what steps do you take outside of the therapy room to, become more well-versed on that for a client?
So most of the people that come to my practice have already researched me pretty well. I've got a website, lots of information, stuff I've written, videos and stuff. So I would have to say that most people know it's a safe space. So it doesn't require like a lot of effort on my part just because they've read my stuff and all of that. It's a very rare client that I feel like I'm in new territory with. And that has always been the case, frankly. So, if I felt like really this was something beyond I was working with someone that I didn't feel qualified, I would refer them. And I have folks, within my network that I would choose to refer someone to that I trust that would very likely have some experience that I don't have. But it's rare, really. Sure. I mean, people's sexual stuff is much more similar than you might realize.
Mm. What would you say is one of the most frequent issues that people come in for then?
It would be libido and feeling like they want more passion in a long-term relationship. That would be the most common.
And I mean, what do you usually ask about with that?
So my approach to that is from a very much an evolutionary perspective, because I understand passion to be very primal. So to access it consciously requires certain effort. Whereas the same effort isn't required at the beginning of a relationship because a new partner taps that primal animalistic energy, right? That's very much, it's easy for the passion to flow in those moments. Mother Nature kind of likes it that way. She wanted people to have new partners, and so she rewards that with passion is a way to think about it. But when people are together for a while, she wasn't concerned about people having long-term relationships. In fact, she wouldn't be interested in that at all. So
Mother Nature's right now like, you all motherfuckers weren't supposed to live this long.
That's right. And you were supposed to switch partners. That's what Mother Nature says.
You're supposed to spread your speed and then die. You're doing it wrong. You selfish fucks.
That's pretty much right. So really in a long-term relationship, it's more about learning how to tap that primal animal stuff, which can make people feel kind of scared. It can feel vulnerable. It can feel like you're setting yourself up for rejection. It's not so simple, but there are ways to do it to trigger your partner and trigger passion and bring more of that like primal stuff back in your sex life.
So it sounds like you don't think that. So I have experienced lack of passion at times in my past, and so sometimes people can think I have thought that like, oh, the passion is lacking that's like the death knell for the relationship as a whole. It sounds like you're saying there are steps that can happen to bring that back.
Right. But people just have to be willing to do that. So I think of it more as like helping people identify how to trigger their partner, because that's a part of it. Like when your partner's passion is triggered, it'll trigger yours. So how to trigger their partner, but also allow themselves to sort of get under their conscious mind and their self-critic and really like that politically correct ideal that people hold for themselves, and find what's really raw and animal inside them and let themselves bring it up. So it sounds good, but it's hard for people to do because it feels really vulnerable.
I mean, yeah, to even say that a relationship you're currently in is lacking passion is a vulnerable thing to admit. Because again, like there's a thought like, well, if we're lacking the passion, fuck, is this thing on the outs? And then you're thinking about all this other stuff instead of the passion element.
Right.
What are some steps like people can do to bring passion back into a relationship?
So first of all, people have to learn to get out of their heads, because nothing ruins passion more than an ongoing dialogue about how you're coming across or how you feel like you look or how your partner looks or whatever. Like that just takes you out of your body and into your mind.
Yeah, but no one validates my neuroses like you do yourself.
That's right.
Who the fuck else am I supposed to complain to when I'm alone in a basement in Bushwick?
Well, you can just ask that part of you to wait at outside the bedroom door just for, yeah. So things like meditation and yoga can be helpful because they teach us how to not listen to that ongoing dialogue, because it's still going to happen, but you gotta, the less you can be up there, the better. So that's kind of like step one, get out of your head. And then it's about, going into a more primitive space, frankly. So this is really for couples who trust each other and have an equally respectful relationship. This isn't stuff for people who don't know each other, but it's like for guys, it's like letting their longing show and kind of coming after their partner, like if we're talking a heterosexual partner, he lets his longing show and kind of comes toward her and after her in a way that looks very intense and determined. Mm-hmm. So focused. So that's a more primal sexual space, right? It's like feeling it and showing it with less concern over how it's coming across.
Which is like such a fear, especially for beta boys like myself, because we think you don't want to be too aggressive. You don't want to be disrespectful. You don't want this. And sometimes you can almost like neuter yourself too much. See, that's that way, right. That's
exactly right.
But it's well-intentioned neutering, right? Because it's come from a place of like, I don't want to hurt this lady I love.
Right.
So I don't want to choke her, but we could just say, no, you just have to teach you how to choke properly. And like,
well, it's about communication. So you both know you're heading into this territory, but that's absolutely true that what we've taught people is appropriate in like hookups is those rules don't apply in long-term respectful loving relationships. They just don't. So it is really true that guys are trying really hard to create something exciting with their partner, and their partner says to me, he touches me so hesitantly. How's that supposed to turn me on? Or he's so careful. Or he asks me if I want to have sex. Like, how's that supposed to work? Like, so it's like all this stuff that we've learned is appropriate in short-term relationships or relationships where people don't know each other. That really doesn't apply in a long-term trusting relationship. She needs to feel his power and his wanting. She needs to feel his sort of sexual confidence and boldness. Now, again, this is all in the context of communication, not necessarily in that moment, but so she knows and is on board with this. But then her role, too, is to trigger him. So what's that? That's like flirting, eating dinner in a certain way, stripping, like these kinds of things that trigger a guy's interest, right? So it's everybody's got to like work to trigger their partner. So that can be difficult for women. They feel like it feels vulnerable to like strip or flirt and stuff like that. That feels like degrading, but actually it's very empowering. If she owns her body and flaunts herself in a way that she's enjoying, it's going to trigger him. Again, we're talking about a heterosexual relationship here, and I apologize for that. But
It was going to be my follow-up, so you'll get to address all that parts after that.
Okay, great. So it's really just about like triggering, I think that that's what porn can do, is it offers people this more primal, very basic animal energy. That's fine. But if you can bring it into your long-term relationship, just between you and your partner, that's going to serve you much better. And the problem too for folks is they're not necessarily used to the intensity of that moment. So people will do things to diffuse the intensity, like they'll giggle or they'll talk baby talk. Like then it just degrades it into something less intense and more comfortable, but certainly not sexy. So like if you were to watch a movie that had a passionate sex scene, they're not giggling. It's not funny. They're in it and it's intense. And I think that's why people like to watch this stuff like in a movie, because they don't have to feel the vulnerability, but they can see the exchange. But that's the level of intensity you want to create with your partner. However, you can get there. But oftentimes it seems to me it requires this like allowing for this base primal sexuality that we spend the rest of our lives trying to get away from.
Yeah, and that vulnerability, I mean, what are we so scared of? Like, we're scared of an embarrassment. Like, I'm going to get super ultra manly and try to get dominant and get rejected, to which I would obviously respect. Or it's like, I'm going to flirt and I'm going to try to do this, and he or she is not going to express interest back, or they're not going to be in the mood. And there's just like, oh gosh, I put myself out there and I put myself in this piece of lingerie and then it didn't get anything. And
that's right.
There's like an embarrassment element, but it's like, hopefully we're with people that we can be embarrassed with. Like, I don't mind being embarrassed in front of Megan if I try something and it doesn't work. Either we laugh about it, or I go like, all right, just wasn't like the right time or good timing. How it sounds like there's this element of almost power or roles that you were describing. So do you feel like it's important that those roles are attached to particular genders, or do you think it's just more important that there is that there are those roles, whether it's a submissive guy and a chick who's in charge, or two queer people of whatever gender makeups? It's like, do you just think that like we need to tap into something primal?
Yes. Love the question. Really love it. Thank you for asking it. And it is really just whatever way a couple can create that dominant exchange is what's going to get them there.
Yeah. And it is also interesting, like where you go, like this is all in the context of loving, trusting long-term relationships. Cause like, I know, again, I hinted at it before, it's like without that romantic element intact, the sexual element, sometimes I lose desire for, where like I might be horny and I could go fuck somebody from Tinder who has expressed sexual interest in me and X, Y, and Z. But like with my girlfriend, if I don't feel confident in where the whole relationship is, when she just randomly grabs my cock, I'm almost like, can you say you love me first?
Right.
Because like I need to hear that, or something like that. Or like, hey, I have all these other, sometimes we get used to like automatic, kind of like implied consent. So like, it might grab my cock and it might even be hard and it might be ready to fuck, but I might not be ready to fuck. And so I'm like, I've got all this other part of my body I would love to have touched. Can we touch like 3 distinct parts of my body first before we go to that part?
You are so right on. I mean, I love these comments. So one of the things that I talk to couples about is you don't want, all sweet, loving, tender sex, and you don't want all animalistic, primal sex. You've got to find a balance. It's different for everybody, but it's only in that balance that this is all going to feel good. Otherwise, if it's all like sweet and tender, it's going to get really boring. And if it's all like super passionate, it's going to feel disconnected. There's not going to be enough real humanity there. So it's about, kind of like easing back and forth through these different energies in your sex life. And people can get stuck in one or the other because everybody finds one form of sex like easiest for them, and couples can get stuck there and then things really get boring for them. So it's important to move around.
And at what point is like, sometimes people say, sorry about my interviewing style. I tend to like start a question, interrupt, do an anecdote, and then kind of ask a question at the end. But it's like, some people would say that like relationships shouldn't be, quote, so much work, or especially like newer relationships, if we're working this hard now, right?
Yeah.
And so at what point is a lack of passion not worth trying to find anymore? Like when is it like, oh, it's just not here anymore, versus this is a thing we need to work on?
That's such a good question, but you know what? I'm not sure how to answer that because I think that it would be very individualized for the couple where like for me to have that kind of reaction. But for the most part, people are trying really hard in their relationships, but they don't really know what to do. Like the stuff that we're talking about now is difficult, and we're not really telling people it can be helpful. So usually I would say to you that even people have made tons of effort and things aren't moving, if they probably haven't tried this particular piece of the puzzle would be a guess of mine.
Well, it seems like you want people to keep trying. That's what I'm kind of hearing in that answer.
Well, unless, so people do grow apart. I'm not all about people staying in relationships. Like I'm not at all. People grow apart. We have opportunities to change and grow today that we never did before with technology and stuff. People are learning, they're exposed to other people. Many relationships aren't helpful or healthy for a couple. So that's really true. But there's also a whole lot people can do to shift things up and change gears. And it could be what we're talking about. It could be developing a fantasy life or bringing in a third person, or there's just a million different ways to handle this challenge of passion. And there's a huge benefit to all of us if we have someone that we really care about and who has our back in life, and we can share this kind of level of intimacy with. So it's worth fighting for as far as I'm concerned. And there's a lot of different ways to inject energy. So that's what I think.
Okay. Now, so you've been practicing for like 25 years, and, the realm of sexuality has changed in the last 5 years has changed huge. We have words we weren't saying 5 years ago, let alone 10, 20, 25 years ago. So how has it been as a sex therapist, as a sex coach what has changed for you? How has it been evolving to these new I don't want to say new concepts because they're not new, but like new to the mainstream. Where have you maybe personally had to evolve on some things? Because obviously, weren't talking gender queerness 25 years ago. So did you have to be like, you know what? I got to go do some reading.
Well, so, I've learned a lot in my reading, in the journals I read, which I've been reading for 20 years, Journal of Sexual Medicine and Archives of Sexual Behavior. There's just really interesting stuff. And so I have access to research and stuff that many people don't. So I'm reading about the variety of sexual fantasy out there and the stuff that people are doing well before I think the culture understands it. Okay. So I think it's given me a heads up. Like there were times in my career when I was reading stuff and it really did surprise me, but it was a while ago and gave me a clear vision. So things like the number of people that have paraphilic fantasies or the number of people who are in non-monogamous relationships. Like there was a time when this was new material to me and I was reading it though in these journals and kind of incorporated it, I think before maybe many people in the culture kind of got the memo.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, did you find yourself, when you were maybe surprised by something back then, is that a conversation you have to have with yourself? Like puppy play. Oh my. Okay. And like you have to kind of sit with that on your own before you have a client who's in the puppy play. It's one of the ways you can kind of go at it objectively.
There probably has been. That makes logical sense what you're saying, but I think that maybe I've been doing this a long time, and it's just it's hard to get thrown off, really. And so I'm sure that's been the case.
Has there been anything that you can think of that like was really a re-education for you, or something where you were reading up on it? Like, was there anything in particular you remember in your career being like, oh, I really got to think about this? Or
honestly, you know what it was? Is way back early in my career when I was working with women with low sex drive. I co-authored a book, and they were working hard in therapy, and I was working with their partners, and there was a significant number of those folks that weren't benefiting the way I wanted them to. I didn't like it. I was making money and they weren't changing, and this didn't make me feel good. So I really went on to into other literature, like anthropology and stuff, to figure out what I was missing. And that's when I came to sort of understand that monogamy isn't necessarily a concept that works for so many people. That did wake me up. I grew up in Ohio, like that just wasn't what I learned in school, or what I was exposed to in the world. So that was a deal break. Like that shook me up. And then that probably at that moment I realized there's so much more here that I didn't get in school. And I would say that was after that, I don't think I was really surprised.
Were you at that point, were you already interested in human sexuality from this like evolutionary standpoint?
No, that's what got me there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say, because, if anyone else was able to finish Sexathon, it's, and they go into like the evolutionary psychology around that stuff. Is that, so you're saying that kind of made you go like, well, why would people?
Yes, it was like it was very powerful for me. And I remember saying to my husband, like, what do I do with this? Should I tell people? Like in my therapy room? Like
proselytize?
That's right. I said, like, people are going to think I'm like, like the devil. And my husband's like, you got to tell him the truth. He's like, get another job if it doesn't work out for you. I'm thinking, okay, that sounds right. So I started bringing these concepts into my therapy room, and everyone, they were just relieved. They were just relieved. Like, wow, this is what's real. Like, let's deal with this. So, some couples deal with it one way, some another, but it's at least, they're able to talk about it, and it's not encased in shame or whatever. So yeah, that was pivotal for me. And I really was surprised at how people received that information so well.
And then you end up writing a book, Monogamy, the Untold Story.
I did, because I thought, like, God, I gotta start telling more people about this.
Yeah. Now, and what did the book kind of more focus on in particular? What was the Untold Story? So
you know what? It really was for therapists. I mean, it's an understandable book for anyone, but it was written for therapists because I felt like this really needed to be part of our dialogue, and it wasn't. So, in our conferences and stuff, people would present, couples they were working with or challenges and stuff. And no one ever said, well, what about the monogamy problem here? Like, what about the challenge? And I would say it, and everyone would look at me and like I, and I'm like, look, people, like, I'm just trying to expand the dialogue here. So that's what got me motivated to write a book.
Don't look at me like you've never wanted to fuck someone other than your wife. Stop pretending. What?
I know. So that's what, so that's got that.
So everyone looked at you like their wives were the wives and husbands were like in the room watching their response. Be like, you better fucking not be interested.
Yeah, it was tricky. It was weird. So really the book was about like, kind of taking apart some of these old dear beliefs that therapists held. Like if people were non-monogamous, then they had attachment problems, or, they have some abuse history, or, whatever. Like, and of course those things can play in. It's not that they're not relevant, but there's a bigger point here, and that is that it's not really in our DNA. So, when we're talking about primal passion and stuff, the body kind of responds to new partners in that primal way. So it's just part of what it is to be human. Yeah. The reason we have that whole like new relationship energy buzz, right? It's like, why wouldn't you want to feel that all the time from new people? Right. Exactly.
So it sounds like the book was a little bit about presenting non-monogamy as just a very valid other option, which is something I say often, which is like, hey, if you choose monogamy, that's great. Just you should choose it and not default into it.
So that's exactly right. And I also tell people that there's no relationship path.
Thank you, by the way. I've been saying that for like 7 years, so I'm glad to know I was right.
Absolutely. And seriously, there's no relationship path that is without risk. And that's what people can kind of like numb themselves into believing that they chose monogamy, it's risk-free. But no way. I mean, it's all risky. So it requires ongoing dialogue. Like you just said, like consciously choose it and keep choosing it consciously. Like have these conversations in an ongoing way. You can't, at year 1 of a marriage, pick monogamy and assume that's going to feel right at year 15 or whatever. I mean, it might, but it might not. You have to talk.
Are you shocked by how many people are so fucking terrified to just talk to their partner? The amount of emails you probably get, how many times do you want to respond with like, have you talked to them about it?
Right. And it's so true, but it's challenging to talk, because people don't always want to hear what you're going to say, and it can hurt them, or you can feel super exposed to acknowledge something. So absolutely, conversation is like point one, but it's really difficult.
Yeah. People get really terrified.
Yeah.
Admitting you have low libido, like that was terrifying for me this year to share, and also a little bit last year, because I was like at a heavier weight than I was used to. I wasn't feeling sexy in my skin. So to tell this one, I mean, geez, I talk about sex for a living, right? And then I find this like sexually vivacious, beautiful woman, and to like have my drive drop was really terrifying, because like I feel like I am trying to share something about me while also trying to defend, like, this has nothing to do with you. Like, this is not to say I don't think you're sexy. This is to think that right now I'd rather sit on a couch. It's really, it's really scary. Because like you're not only trying to expose yourself, but also you have to deal with however they're receiving it.
That's right.
And if they're receiving it in a defensive manner, now you have this fight from two angles.
It's so true. And in those kind of like very emotionally intense conversations, we all hear things differently. So the same sentence is perceived differently when emotions are high. So it is really complicated.
Mm-hmm. And you said you have written about and discussed a lot libido in women, especially, and there's like that, people are trying to find like the pill, like they're like people, probably men, want to find like the magic pill that will make women horny. Like they want to find the FDA approved Spanish fly, so to speak. And there even was something that was like approved. I think I remember it was not actually really effective, but maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what is going on out there with help for women with libido issues.
So there are 2 medicines right now that are available for women with libido issues. I was part of the panel that approved flibanserin originally, actually. It is effective for a certain percentage of women, certainly not all, but the women that find it helpful find it super, super helpful, which really got my attention when I was looking at the research when that was in the process of getting its approval. And now today they also have an injectable medicine that you take PRN before sex. And again, it can be super helpful for a certain proportion of women. And so it's like you're going to have to try it to know. And if there are certain like significant other issues going on, it's unlikely to be helpful. So is it similar to Viagra or sildenafil, whatever it is?
Like, is it similar to that in that it's not going to make you horny, but if you're horny, your parts are going to be better facilitated? Or is it something that actually like helps in your brain make you feel desire?
Well, that would be the argument, that it helps in the brain to make you feel desire. But just like so many medicines, I think people don't know very specifically necessarily how this process unfolds. But yeah, it's different from Viagra in that way.
Okay, yeah, because I think some people think like, oh, this is a boner pill. It's like I've taken them, but if I wasn't in an aroused state of mind, like my penis is not erect. It doesn't do that. It's just, but like when I do get aroused, holy shit, does it fucking work? So I didn't know if the women's equivalent was like, oh, this is going to increase blood flow and make you wetter or whatever, help with self lubrication.
No, it's not like that.
Okay, so it's not a physical thing. Okay, cool. Right. And then the other question I think that's so important around this concept of like creating these pills that either create desire or help with, physical dysfunction, but like is lower libido even an issue? Like, is that like when a woman comes to you and says like, I've got low libido, and even if you say like, yeah, you do, if you discern that she does, does it matter? Like, is it really that important?
So it depends on the couple, really. So 20% of marriages are sexless, and there's a significant number of those couples that are quite happy with that. So I really think it depends on the person and the couple and how important it is for them.
Okay. What are are there any other like really major issues you find that are so frequent with your clients that we should bring up?
Nothing is coming to mind at the moment, but let me stew on that while we keep talking, and maybe I'll think of something.
Another thing I would ask is, do you find there's like certain types of clients that have a similar issue do you find when you have queer clients that there's a super common issue? When you have kinky clients, it's usually a very similar issue. When you have non-monogamous clients, that it's usually a specific issue, or is it really just that varied? I think because a lot of people are obsessed with like, am I normal? Am I wrong? Do other people struggle with the same thing as me? I think is like such a key concern.
I think you're right. And, people are trying, we're all trying our hardest for the most part, and we all want to be loved and we all want to be accepted. And there are some really basic truths to being human and what we're wanting to give and receive in a romantic relationship. And it falls out differently for different people. But, I really feel like we're all so similar. Like really, in a very basic way.
I guess I would close with just like, if someone is thinking about, do I need sex therapy? Mm-hmm. What's a question or two you would say they should ask themselves before they go seek out a sex therapist?
Well, let me say, I started my career as a general therapist, so I'm very pro therapy, and I really feel like we could all benefit in one way or another from looking inside, right? And getting to know what's in our unconscious, because it impacts our behavior so much and our thoughts and our feelings. And without any access directly to our unconscious, we're disempowered and we're apt to misunderstand ourselves. We don't see how we're coming across in the world. We think we've got a clue, but you know what? Most of us, without some help, don't really understand what others see and what others are reacting to and all of that. So in a very basic way, I really feel like people can benefit and it's very empowering to learn about yourself. Freud himself said, he couldn't analyze himself. We can't. So there's that. And I think that we all can learn how to give and receive love better. Like we're all works in progress. So, that's something that sex therapy or general therapy can really help you do, is the more you know yourself, the more you can give and allow yourself to bring back to you. So I'm inclined, if it occurs to someone, I wonder if therapy can help. I'm inclined to say, it probably can, because we can all benefit. And I would say the more important issue is, can therapy help? The more important issue is finding the right therapist so that you're in an environment where you really can do that work. So that would be what I would say, is talk to several therapists on the phone, see who feels like you can talk to them and they're. Yeah.
That was going to be I guess the real brief follow-up was, because it's something I got nervous about when I was shopping for therapists a few years ago too. It's like, well, how do you know, like, how do you suss out the therapist to know if it's not whether or not they are a good therapist, but if they're a good therapist for you? But but is that the metric? Like just someone you feel comfortable talking to?
That is, people try, as therapists, we're used to people calling and saying like, what's your approach? And, this and that. And of course I'll answer those questions. They're logical questions, but the real point is, I think, how do you feel when you're talking to them? Do you feel comfortable? If they're in an office, which many of us aren't right now, do you feel comfortable in their space? And do you like the way they speak to you? And that's I would trust your gut, what feels right.
All right. Trust your gut, everybody. There we go. Dr. Brandon, this was fantastic. Thank you so much for, sharing all this with us. Where can people find you? Where can they get your books? Do your plugs. Plug away.
Well, everything is probably easiest to find on my website, which is drbrandon.net. So,
and that's,
drbrandon.net. I'm on Twitter and social media and all that, and you can find me those ways as well. Like Twitter is @drbrandon. But those links are on my website. So really everything, the stuff I've written, the videos I've made, I think for the most part, you can find it all there. So it's the most comprehensive place to look. I have a Psychology Today blog that I've been writing for about a year now that I love. And that's another, I think, maybe interesting place to get information. So there's a link on my site, but if you just put my name into Psychology Today, it's called The Future of Intimacy. And I think I try to put my best stuff there. So,
so if we want to learn, if we want to keep a track on what your thoughts are on the future of sex and the future of intimacy with sex tech out there, we'll find it over there.
You will. Absolutely.
Beautiful. Well, thank you again for chatting with us. Why don't you go ahead and say goodbye to everybody?
It was my pleasure, Billy. Thank you so much for having me on. And I appreciate everyone listening.
So many like full, rich, and succulent topics to discuss. Don't you want to know what your fellow fan whores thought about this week's show? Come chat about it in the episode 364 Discord channel. Come stop by the Champagne Room, meet some like-minded friends, find a sexy, supportive community at manwhorepod.com/Discord. And if you want to say something to me more directly, send me your comments, your questions, your criticisms, your cancellations over to manwhorepod@gmail.com. Yeah, a lot to chew on with that. You know, there's a lot of stuff with intimacy. I think you could hear that I was clearly connecting with. And, you know, there's some things I'm going to be working on in 2021, trying to get more secure. Everybody trying to get healthier, trying to do better, trying not to be the monster that some people sometimes convince me I might be. If you think I'm sexy, you want to throw me some money, you can find me on OnlyFans at onlyfans.com/callmebilly. Been getting more and more of y'all in my DMs wanting some one-on-one sexy flirting times, and it is, oh, what a dream to be paid to flirt with people and make them come. And if you think I'm fun but not so sexy, still want to give me money, then join the Fan Whore Nation at patreon.com/manwhorepodcast. That's Patreon, patreon.com/manwhorepodcast. Next week, everyone, I've got on Talia Lavin. She is the author of the new book, Culture Warlords, My Journey into the Dark Web of White Supremacy. We're also talking a whole lot about incels in that one. I just finished recording with her. It's a bop. I think it's a bop. Can podcasts be a bop? I'm still learning the new kid lingo. Someone shoot me an email and let me know. Happy goddamn New Year, everyone. Let's leave this year in the dust as we enter a new arbitrary set of 12 months that I'm sure we're going to blame all of our negative feelings on, as we do every year. Happy New Year's, everybody. Love you very much. Stay slutty. It's the vibrator that has no equal. And now, Motor Bunny offers their thrusting sex machine, the Motor Bunny Buck. Enjoy a fan whore discount at manwhorepod.com/motorbunny or use promo code manwhore at checkout.